You might have heard a lot from INEO recently. They've been releasing a bunch of devices, a lot of announcements coming from them. But one that's come out recently has gotten not that much attention, but might be one of the most interesting things that they've announced, but at the same time could be seen as so disappointing. The INEO Next Lite is a device that the INEO has recently announced, using the style of the INEO Next models, which used to be fabulously expensive, but costing it down. It is still the original body, but made of more cheaper materials and more flashy colorings. But what's baffling most of all, they're selling this for a base price of $300. And once I go through the specs now, you might see why. The screen is a 7-inch 800p IPS panel, much like the base model Steam Decks. It has an AMD Ryzen 5 4500U, or you can upgrade it to a Ryzen 7 4800U. Both models come with 16 gigabytes of RAM. They have the base model has 120 gigs of storage. It's a mid-range model with 512 gigabytes of storage. It comes with the RAM is 16 gigabytes. It comes at a speed at 4266 megahertz. It has support up to 8 terabytes of storage. I don't know why that one's entirely relevant, but hey, that's nice to know. It has a dual copper piped cooling system. It comes in pastel blue, bright white, jet black. It has Hall sensing joysticks, so you'll never have Joy-Con drift in these. It has gyroscopes and vibration motors that are really nice for when you're emulating systems that have gyroscope functionality. It has a USB Gen 2 by 2 USB-C port. It has one USB-C Gen 2 Type-C port and a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. It has a 47 watt-hour battery, which is something we see on the higher-end models of the Steam Deck. It weighs about 720 grams. It has Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.0. And what is most interesting of all, the operating system, it comes with pre-installed HoloOS, which is a fork of SteamOS on the Steam Deck, this device is so directly competing with the Steam Deck in many ways. It competes with it tries at least in terms of battery life, performance, even the hardware connectivity of the device really tries to be a newer Steam Deck in that sense. Even down to the price of $300 is trying to outcompete in price. But what you might find is that you're actually losing a lot when it comes to, the performance of this device. And something that's very convenient for me, I actually have a laptop with 16 gigabytes of RAM and has a Ryzen 7 4800U. And while I'm not going to say the performance will be exactly the same, there will be some differences due to, it running on Linux, it having faster memory than the laptop I'm using to test. But it should give you an idea of what to expect out of this device. And if I'm being honest, I'm a little underwhelmed. Expecting to pay probably around $400 for the 4800U model. That is the cost of a Steam Deck, and you're not getting the same performance as a Steam Deck. And sometimes it's a little less, but sometimes it's gigantic gaps in performance. And no way has this 4800U ever beaten the Steam Deck's processor. It has only ever came close to the Steam Deck's performance in certain titles. Even in the most demanding titles, something like Cyberpunk can be playable on the Steam Deck. While I saw averages of 20 to 30-ish FPS with this processor. Granted, like I said before, this is not the device playing these games. I'm using a laptop with the same processor that comes with this device. And this processor originally released 4 years ago. And it was, at the time, a cut-down model of a processor that already existed. The Ryzen 5000 series laptop chips released before the 4000 series did. And those were amazing. And this 4000 series chips came out after for more budget and, more slimlined laptops and, low-powered computers. They were never meant to be these hyper-powerful gaming machines. They don't even have good onboard graphics using the Vega 8 graphics that we've seen for a very long time on AMD chips. And I would say this is good for playing those esports games, but most of those esports games require you to have Windows installed because of anti-cheat problems. Because I know games like Destiny 2, Rainbow Six Siege, Call of Duty, most of these games that could be playable on this processor, unlikely Destiny 2 would actually be playable on this, but hypothetically, if any of these games were to be playable on this device, you straight up wouldn't be allowed to due to anti-cheat because it comes pre-installed with HoloOS. And all this talk of performance is strictly about the 4800U. And I would expect the 4500U to perform even worse, as it's the most budget model you can get. And not a second thing to mention about the most budget model, yay, it has 16 gigabytes RAM. That's really nice to see on the $300 base model. But it only has 120 gigabytes of storage. That can barely hold one game. You can't even hold Modern Warfare 2019 on that. You can't have Destiny 2 installed and Windows. Windows takes up like 30-ish gigs, depending on the kind of updates you're at and how much bloat you have installed. But that could be a significant amount, depending on how long you have this device. As Windows updates start stacking on it, you would have no storage. And I'm sure, since it comes with HoloOS, that you actually do get to keep a large portion of that storage, which is probably why they're doing this, is so they can have that $300, base tier device without having to sacrifice a bunch of storage. So you really actually have something like 60 gigs left after the OS is installed, like you would probably have with a Windows installation on this device. Bear in mind, that was all for specifically the base model. You wouldn't have this problem if you had just 256 gigabytes of storage, most likely, but the base model is what it is, and I highly doubt anybody would be buying these higher tier models, because why would you buy any of that when you have such a compelling price at $300? Most people don't want to spend so much on a device, and once you give them that base model option, most people might end up buying that, and what they're buying is garbage. That was a little hyperbolic, but you get what I'm saying. This device, while super interesting and hyper competitive in terms of its price, it doesn't pose a great value when you can spend a little bit more to get so much more performance. Right now, Valve is selling all their old base model Steam Decks. Yes, you'll have substantially less storage, but that's easily upgradable. You can buy an extra 256 gigabytes of an SSD and upgrade it yourself for $6, for Christ's sake. If you care about buying used storage, which isn't recommended, but it's something you can do if you seriously need to save the money. I just think this poses a awful value. It is definitely a very interesting device, but I just don't see how this will really compete with anything. I guess you could see this competing with other handheld emulation devices, something like the Odin 2 or something from Retroid or something like that, but I highly doubt this would be even a good device for that. I doubt this thing would be able to play high-end emulation very well. I'm sure it can emulate Switch, but it might not be any better than those Android devices. I'm sure it could emulate things like PS3, but you could just buy most of those games anyways. So I get most people, there's some exclusives, so that wouldn't be necessarily applicable for everybody. But still, this device just simply wouldn't have enough performance to even do that anyways. The Steam Deck struggles with PS3 emulation most of the time, and this device using a substantially weaker processor wouldn't fare any better. One area where I thought they might have some sort of advantage on this iNeo Lite device, honestly, I highly doubt they would have an advantage in battery life. Due to this older and more inefficient design, they actually might either have the same battery life or a little better because it was a more, energy optimized processor to begin with, but I highly doubt it's going to be that much better, especially when gaming, because it was never designed to be that sort of device. This processor came out at a time right before this advent of handheld gaming really became popular. This came out 4 years ago, back in 2020, before we had the Steam Deck, and all we had were these really interesting devices coming from iNeo and GPD at the time. That was basically it. And later on, we would see people like 1X Player Then the Steam Deck and stuff would start coming out, and where we'd see these more energy optimized gaming chips for handheld gaming computer devices. So it wasn't until much later that we saw these chips really become good at gaming. So this chip is uniquely positioned for value, yes, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily good at gaming. And I would see this only as maybe a high-end emulation device, not necessarily really good for your, playing your mobile PC games. It's really unfortunate because I really do hope that we see more competition at these lower price brackets with more powerful chips. Like, I would truly love to see a proper Steam Deck competitor come out at this $300 to $350 price point, because that's where most of the people will be buying. That's where you're competing with the Nintendo Switch, the Steam Deck, these high-end emulation devices. If you truly want something to be competitive in that field, you're going to have to offer a little bit more performance than this is offering. So what are your thoughts? Are you interested in this iNeo Next Lite device? Are you disappointed like me that it comes with a 4-year-old processor? Or are you kind of interested in this device because it uniquely fits your sort of setup, what you want to achieve in gaming? Leave your thoughts and comments down below. I'm super interested to hear what you think. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All that other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.